of Women Voters, the Candidates Forum, is October 2nd at Hess Park, and we believe that's at 7 o'clock. And then the CHOA debate will be held October 9th at 7 o'clock, also at Hess Park. So and I know that you wouldn't be in this room if you weren't interested in RPV and RPV politics. Please make those events also. The first question, I think, Ken, we're going to start on your end and then go to Anthony and come back again. And as the Planning Commission Chairman, I'm kind of interested in this question myself. When will the City Council begin to discuss the general plan changes, and do you think a public forum with residents should occur?
As I said before, when the first City Council was convened, we trusted the residents. The first thing we did was tell the residents to come up with the goals that they wanted for the city, and that's where our general plan came from. And as I said earlier, I don't think our general plan needs revision. It needs updating to include those things that haven't been done. To that extent, we really need to get some of the people involved who weren't involved originally and have an open forum. I think workshops would be good throughout the city. We don't need to have one big one with hundreds of people, but I think we should go to the various communities. Western Avenue should be considered a community, Grandview another, and so on around the city, and get to find out what they really want. I think if we go back and take a look at the goals and get the people to understand what those goals were and what the intent was when they were written, and see if they still endorse those. If they do, that I think will go a long way to what the general plan can become and remain. As I said earlier, a city that doesn't remember its origin, its history, or its focus when it was first incorporated, it's like a tree without roots. It's going to founder. We need the people to be involved. We have to trust them.
Go that way if you would.
When is the general plan going to come before the City Council? When the Planning Commission is done with it, Mr. Chairman. Right?
I have to retort on that. We are really trying.
Look, I agree with Ken. The general plan needs updating. It needs to reflect the original principles of our founders and that of a low-density, semi-rural city that has open space and addresses all the other criteria that go along with the general plan, socioeconomic and cultural and everything like that. I would like to take this opportunity to say that I'd love to see the farming element, the agricultural element continue in the general plan. Because I think that's an important piece of history that we need to continue. But again, I think that the citizens should have input when it's, when it's finished. I think there should be a public input, and we want to hear from all of you if what the process has evolved into is consistent with what you feel is the lifestyle of Rancho Palos Verdes. And so I would welcome that public input, and then I guess we'll decide whether they're adopted or not.
Thanks, Dave. Back when I was the president of the RPV Council Homeowners Association, known by the acronym CHOA, I had the opportunity to serve for 2 years on the General Plan Update Committee. That was about 10 years ago. And I'm excited that it's finally working its way up through our distinguished Planning Commission. and would like to be able to see it soon. Homeowner association workshops are a great way to get community outreach. I'm seeing that being successfully done right now. For example, Nicole Jules, one of our senior engineers, is out along the western side of our city, going up and down Hawthorne Boulevard, visiting different HOAs, briefing them on the traffic synchronization plan and the right-of-way improvements that are going to be done. And that is really received well by the public, and I call that the real community outreach. Meetings like this that where you got microphones in the back for people to come up and talk about, I just don't think are as effective as getting out and sitting down with them in their own neighborhoods and talking about it. I agree with Anthony that farming is an important component of our history that we need, if necessary, to stretch a little bit in order to make sure that we keep it. That like the horse trails, for example, in keeping that part of our community intact is an important part of our history. I don't own a horse. I'm never going to own a horse, but I like the fact that, unfortunately, I have little boys who have no interest in horses. But I like the fact that we've got that part of our history and our culture and our community that's intact up here. Let me give you another example of what has worked out well as a model that I think we can use in getting community input when it comes time to address the general plan updates. And that's Abalone Cove. A number of years ago, there was a vision meeting about what to do down at Abalone Cove to help make it a little bit nicer. I know Councilman Knight was there at that meeting originally. I was there at that meeting originally. A couple years goes by, planning happens, and they're ready to move forward with implementing that. I asked staff at the time, because so much time had gone by, and some of the original people that had participated in that meeting had moved on, if they could go out into the community and hold several more outreach meetings down here at the Interpretive Center and elsewhere. And staff did that, and I think that's been received extremely well. So we've got some good models that work as far as community input. General plan is a hugely important, if not the most important document in our city. I was pleased to have a role in helping to shape the future of it. I rely a lot on people like the Gleghorns here who've been around a lot longer than I have for direction of where the city came from and where we want to take it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Campbell, let's stay on this end. And my apologies, I've received 40 or so questions, and I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. I did promise this gentleman this question. I'm going to kind of distill it down a little bit. Are you for or against a self-funded skate park near the dog park?
If you're talking about the City Hall dog park, I mean, there's a couple of small ones. There's one over on the east side. Yes, I am. I think we've got a couple of good potential locations up there at the City Hall site, and I think it would be a good fit for where our small, I call it a neighborhood dog park, currently is. It's away from residents. There wouldn't be a sound issue. It'd be we're trying to encourage the Sheriff's Department to spend more time up and around the City Hall. It's a natural place for them to come when they do their business at City Hall, and it would be an expansion of community recreation services, and it would get a lot of these kids off the streets and off the commercial properties where they're skating now, and it would be safer for them. And as we've all found from the dog park, if any of you haven't been there yet, you should go there. It's a great way to meet your neighbors. It's a great way to find out more about the city and get your dog some exercise as well. So I see that as a good co-location with the dog park.
I think a skate park is worthwhile. It's a kind of sport that's up and coming, and a lot of the people need to have a place to practice that sport. I am not under the delusion that we're going to take a lot of people off the streets. You're still going to have those that will not go to the skate park and go on the streets. The only concern I have is when you put that skate park in, it's going to be a concrete type of structure. It's not going to be easily movable. It should be placed in a location that is consistent with what a long-range plan for the Civic Center would be, so that we don't find ourselves either having to compromise the Civic Center or having to move a skate park. So if it's planned correctly and done in an integrated fashion, I support it totally.
Yes, I'm in favor of having a skate park near the dog park. I think that that location would fit well. It certainly, there's enough space near that dog park that we can have a skate park of some significance. I'm sure that ideally, people would like to have a bigger one, and I know that the City of Rolling Hills Estates did offer some space down at Ernie Howlett Park. Unfortunately, that did not work out, so there is a definite need for another skate park on the peninsula, and if it can be done by the dog park, I think that it would be great. People can go drop off their kids to skate while they go to the dog park. You can have a dual purpose there. So I think that would be a great way to serve our residents.
Thank you. Mr. Mistich, let's stay on your end if we could and work our way back. And I've gotten 2 or 3 versions of this question. What is your opinion on the current staff head count and their performance in general?
Well, the current staff head count, I believe, is 54 individuals. I think that they do, an adequate job for the size, but as far as changing that, I think that that's something that the city manager would have to evaluate whether she's got sufficient number of people or not. Certainly, the matrix analysis did recommend adding some individuals. I did not support that at the time because the data that I was given did not include salaries for the, I think it was a deputy public works director. And so I did not support the addition of additional employees at this time because I did not have all the information that I felt was adequate to make a good decision on behalf of the residents. But that's definitely a decision that the city manager is going to have to bring back to the council and discuss.
Before we start talking about the adequacy of our staff and their talent, as I said earlier, we have staff with an education experience higher than a lot of consultants, and we should take more advantage of them. However, we need to have better direction from the council in terms of what the staff does. In too many instances, when a grant comes due, whether it's something that's in our plan or something that was desired or its scope was identified, staff spends a lot of time preparing that grant, and then it falls down and doesn't get done. To my mind, that's a waste of staff time. They could be better, they could serve better by actually doing some of the things that the consultants do. We spend an awful lot of time with staff time for the Annenberg Foundation project. Everybody knew that the restrictions were there, and why that much time was spent on that project, especially staff time, is something I don't really understand. I'd like somebody to explain that to me. We had the opportunity for a grant for Abalone Cove of some $7 million, and immediately a plan was put together to use all $7 million. Fortunately, SOC 2 came on and said no on that one, as well as the Annenberg Foundation. We have to use our staff in a much better way with instructions and guidance from the council, and not just run off on grants without really a requirement for them. And if we do that, I'm not sure that we don't have an adequate staff at the present time.
Thanks, Ken. I'm going to address the first part of the question first. I I've asked for an analysis of where the work bottlenecks are down at City Hall whenever a question is raised about why can't we hire more employees. What I would like to see as a businessman, I own my own business. I've run businesses. I've been partners in businesses before. I've been in business for 30 plus years. What I would like to see is if work isn't getting done, where in the organization are the bottlenecks? And why is there always a focus on just hiring more people as opposed to addressing what work actually needs to be done? Because having run a business, I can tell you sometimes there's bottlenecks that only needs an extra few hours a day from a person or a particular expertise in order to clear that bottleneck. Just hiring an extra person isn't always the solution. We also need, once we have that analysis as the second phase, to look at contracting out for those bits and pieces of services that need to be completed. Right now, we're a contract city. We have got embedded private employees over at the planning department, for example, that are not city employees. They work for outside engineering firms, for example. They've got an RPV employee email address, and they're contract workers. I think we should look at analyzing where the bottlenecks are. Once we have identified them, what's the expertise that we need to eliminate those bottlenecks, analyze whether we can contract out for it. If it then calls for having to hire a full-time employee to fill that position, then we should. So it's difficult to answer the question if we have enough employees or not unless we actually know how our operation actually works. And I haven't seen that report yet. I've asked for it a number of times over the last couple of years. I think we'll get there simply because we're paying a lot more attention as a result of the matrix management study that we completed last year.
Thank you. Let's move the microphone back to Ken, if we would. What is your solution to the Portuguese Bend issue problem? And frankly, gentlemen, that is not defined. Sure. What is your solution to the Portuguese Bend issue problem? It's an eye of the beholder question.
You're not going to get a solution.
Jim Knight just said he was the problem.
You're not going to get a solution tonight because it's going to take some time. We have known since 1983 at least that water was the main problem. We are using Band-Aids, in my opinion, on that problem. Wells that failed because they're put in a slide where it's moving, drainage that isn't done well enough to sustain a season or two. We end up spending $500,000 roughly a year just to keep Portuguese Bend an e-ticket ride, if you remember that from Disneyland. Every 3 or 4 years, we spend anywhere from another $1 million to $4 million to relocate it. We know what's causing the slide. It's time to start dealing with the cause and not keep playing games with Band-Aid fixes. We need to stop the water from infiltrating, shut the faucet off. Secondly, then drain it with appropriate work on the drainage to be sure that it doesn't continue to infiltrate, and then take care of the surface zone erosion problem. The first thing we need to do is come up with a comprehensive plan of various elements that we can do and triage them to find out which one would be the most effective, and then go down that path. We've spent 30 years spending money on that slide, and it is no better now than it was then. That needs to stop with a good comprehensive component plan to get it done. That's the first thing we really need to do.
Yeah, Ken is essentially right. I mean, we're not going to come up with a engineered solution tonight, but one of the things that does need to be pointed out, not only is the water the issue, it's the soil that's there, it's the bentonite. With water, it turns into soap, and then things slide. What we need to look at is how to reduce the slide from the top and support the bottom. The wells, the dewatering wells that we have there in Portuguese Bend do need to be moved up higher so they can remove the water higher up in the slide and prevent that water from, through gravity, coming down through the slide and through fissures and affecting the rest of the slide. The other issue that we have to do is we have to support the toe of the slide. I've talked with some individuals. One of them is sitting right next to me about, whether there's some type of reef or something that would support the tidal action that keeps eroding away the toe. Because if you're supporting the top, but the toe is loose, it's going to continue to slide down. And so I am not an engineer, but I think that the basic concepts of addressing the top of the slide and addressing the bottom of the slide will help slow it down to a trickle. But the key is removing the water. Got to get the water out of there, because otherwise you have soap underneath that soil and it slides down.
Thanks, Dave. First I would do is a short-term solution, which is expansion of the dewatering wells. We've got a bunch that are out there already. There's only 6 that are still functioning. It's pretty well accepted that they are effective, and I would go back out and re-drill them and keep them functioning and operable. I mean, you understand why a dewatering well doesn't work after a while in a slide, because it just keeps moving, and so it breaks off. So it's an effective way of removing the water. There's an extraordinary amount of water that's removed every day by those wells that are functioning out there. So that's short term. Midterm, I would expand the GPS monitoring of the movement that's out there. I mean, it is a complex slide. If you've ever seen a map of the ground movement out there, it varies all over. I mean, there's parts of that slide, believe it or not, that move over 2 feet a month. 2 feet a month. There's parts of it that move maybe 1 inch a month. So it's not just a simple slide. It's a very complex slide that we generally understand what is causing it. But one solution isn't going to do it. Isn't going to do it all. Long term, I'm supportive of exploring some of what's already been spoken about, is supporting the toe of the slide, and investing the money that we're spending instead in road repair out there, investing some of that into a possible permanent or at least semi-permanent solution. If you can slow down the slide, it saves you money. I'm not sure if it's possible to completely stop it, but just slowing it down saves money, and that's really what we ought to be aiming for. Thanks.
And why don't we move the microphone down to Mr. Misitich, please? It's a development question.
Is this called a change-up?
Yeah, is it a change-up? I forget after a while. This is a development question. Lone Point area benefits from wonderful views of the ocean. And it seems that during the recession, we've had a break in that development. What do we need to do to protect Lone Point from overdevelopment and protect our views?
Well, if there's open lots there, obviously, we had an issue that came before the council, I believe, 4 years ago, and that was the council attempted to reduce the size and the profile of the house roofs so it wouldn't affect roofs. Quite frankly, the owners of property have a right to development. I mean, that is their right. And, it comes in conflict when somebody has had an open lot view of the ocean there, and they don't want to see an obstruction there. As we all know, the city allows people to build houses up to 16 feet in height. I know that we did some designing on the city council 4 years ago on a couple of those houses to preserve some views for some individuals there in Long Point. And that's quite frankly the dilemma that you face, is that if you have people with property that they want to build, they're gonna be allowed to build that, and we have to go ahead and balance that with what the people in the neighborhoods have and try to preserve views as much as we possibly can.
First of all, if you own a piece of property and you're going to do something that's consistent with the zoning, you have every right to do that. If the city decides you can't, that's inverse condemnation and the city has to buy it. That's not what we're about. That's not what the city was founded for. We have a number of procedures. The Planning Commission, when they look at a development, they have a number of findings they have to make. Now, one of the things that I think we need to do to improve that process is not have the Planning Commission act as an architect, a builder, or a landscaper. What they need to do is look at the findings and whether they can make them or not, specify why a finding can be made and why one cannot. Then it becomes the owner's problem to decide how he's going to solve that problem. I've seen cases where the Planning Commission in the past has dictated some architectural changes and they ended up with unintended consequences that were horrendous and they had to go back again. So I think we need to give the owner the opportunity to do that, but clearly define what was passed and what wasn't passed with respect to the findings. Secondly, we should also apply the view ordinance more rigorously in the area. We try to tinker with it. The view ordinance in its original ordinance did not have the word significant in it. Now we have the word significant. Who's to determine what is significant of that? Is that left to someone on staff who has a different perspective than the owner? I think we need to start enforcing those two ordinances correctly, and then we will provide the protection for people in terms of the property development and view that our ordinances provide. If that is not what the citizenry wants, then let's have them come back and petition to change the ordinance to reflect what they really want. But up until that point, let's not tinker with it. Let's enforce it properly so that both sides of that issue are treated fairly and not an advantage to one side or the other.
Protecting views in the Long Point area, I think what we do down there pertains to everywhere in the city where there's still potential development to be done. I think a strict adherence to our neighborhood compatibility standards needs to be done. We spent a lot of time a number of years ago coming up with that. I think it works. It allows some flexibility in the design of a house, but at the same time, we want to retain our sense of community here without the jagged interruptions of incompatible properties or houses adjacent to each other. There's something also in the development business called a variance. What a variance means is you take what's allowed to you and then you apply to change it. Thereby you're varying from say a height restriction or a setback or something. And in my experience, I think variances are not fully understood by the people that are making the decisions on them, and I would slow them down and I would study them more before automatically granting them. There's creeping variances where as property changes hands, for example, we're seeing that as a likelihood down in Ponte Vista. The owner of the property right now wants a certain number of homes, 830 some homes. They're hoping to get approval for that. If they get it, they're likely to sell it to a number of different developers. Each of those developers will likely come back to the city of LA. And why that's important, it's right across the street from Western Avenue, which thousands of our residents live in. What's important to understand is that as that property gets broken up and different developers build different parts of the tracks there, is that they'll ask for variances as well. And so you've got to be careful in not just looking at what you're granting right now, but also the long-term impact. I really do think there's plenty of common ground that I've seen in my experience on council to allow people to develop their property, to creatively develop it, to make it an attractive part of their community. But we've got to also ensure, as my two fellow candidates pointed out, that we've got to have plenty of community input. We don't want surprises. We don't want something to be built and then somebody to come out of the woodwork and say we weren't aware of that. We want to give people every opportunity to know what's being built in their community before it happens.
Thank you, and if you give the mic to Mr. Dida, please. This is going to be the last question, and again, my apologies for, I've a whole pocket full of questions here that I didn't get to, but, and then we'll be going to the candidate summaries. But maybe this one hits the heart of a number of matters. Who do you rely on for advice on city-related issues? Mr. Dida?
My first advisor is my wife.
Great
And
answer.
And she makes sure that I know what's going on and what the sense of the community is. The other is basically you people. I get calls, even though I have not been on a council, repeatedly from a lot of people telling me what their problems are and asking me how they can solve them. To a certain extent, I do know the process, so I can help them with that from that standpoint. But you get a sense of what the people are concerned about. You also get a sense of what the people are concerned about when you see the city embark on projects, and you get a hue and cry from people that put organizations together to fight that particular project. Those are the things you need to listen to. Those are the things that really make a difference. And if you can take those honestly and carefully and apply them to the city as a whole, you will find that you're going to get all the advice that you can possibly handle.
Ken, I agree with you. My wife, number one advisor is my wife. And she is here in the community on a daily basis. During the day, I have children in the community going to school. She's talking to them probably more frequently than I am because I'm out working, and she's giving that feedback to me, and what's going on here, what's going on there. Also, I'm going to agree with Ken as far as people in the community. They're going to come back and let me know how they feel, and what they are recommending. And I think that's important because you get a different perspective. In council meetings, we get big binders, a lot of data to go through. And it's really good when we have the public comments, because some items that people bring up, some advice, some piece of information that they give us really helps us with our decisions, because a lot of our decisions are very difficult, especially things that are based on land use issues. Those are always difficult because somebody's always going to go away unhappy. And I think that hearing from the public, talking to individuals that are leading organizations, that is very, very informative to us as council members and helps us make those decisions when our wives are maybe not available.
Well, I already know how I have to start this answer off, or I'm going to be looking for somebody's couch to sleep on tonight. That or I'll be out with Scout in his doghouse in the backyard. In all seriousness, I rely And all of us rely. I mean, I think what is the makings of a good council person is somebody that's involved in the community. I mean, there's no doubt all three of us up here are involved in the community, and there's three of us in three different ways. I come up through the homeowners associations. I originally moved here, met a couple of my neighbors, immediately got sucked into hosting the local HOA summer barbecues. That ever happened to any of you when you first moved in? Well, that's how it happened to us. And I like my neighbors, and I got involved in my HOA and got more and more involved in the community and ended up on city council. So I talked to a lot of the people that I met over the years through the HOAs, up through CHOA, the Council of Homeowners Associations. I've got two young children. I've got two boys, age 9 and 11. One's in 3rd grade, one's in 6th, at elementary school and in middle school now. I've got great exposure to parents and families and their extended families as to what they think is important in the community and what their issues are. I rely a lot on the city founders and seniors. I've lived here 15 years. I am very aware, I make myself aware that I wasn't here when the city was founded. I was 18 years old and had just joined the Army. So I came here after the really heavy lifting was done by people like Mr. Dida and the Gleghorns here and a number of the rest of you. Mickey back there, I mean there's a whole room full of you here that have been here a long time. Your history, your knowledge is important to me. And for those of you that know me, know that I like to listen and hear about the history. I think that's a good way to make sure that my role on council keeps us on track with what the original formation of our city was all about. Something that hasn't been mentioned here tonight is we've got 30 members of the community that are all volunteers and hardworking volunteers on the Planning Commission, Finance Advisory Commission, Traffic Safety Commission, Emergency Preparedness Commission, the Water Oversight Board. I talk to those folks a lot. They put a lot of time, effort, sweat into analyzing the minutia that helps me do a better job on council. And then finally, there's people that are very involved in what I call single issues, which is open space or trails or bikes or roadways, et cetera. And those are important people that I talk to and listen to help me do a better job. Thanks.
Okay, let's go now to concluding remarks, and there'll be 3 minutes each. And Brian, if you'd send I think we started on your end, so let's start down on Anthony's end for the closing remarks.
Serving the 42,000 residents of Rancho Palos Verdes as mayor and councilman for the past 4 years has been both an honor and a privilege. As our city celebrated its 40th anniversary, we remain fiscally prudent and financially solvent. While public service certainly has its rewards, we have faced many challenges on the city council, some of which have directly impacted residents of our city. Together, we have addressed several issues, including San Ramon and other infrastructure action items, Marymount, increased public safety needs, Annenberg, memorializing the 20-year-long saga of our extensive trails network, and more, as well as the ongoing zoning challenges soon to come before council from the Planning Commission. Upon assuming office in 2009, I introduced a zero-based budget format for accountability and transparency purposes. Our city remains financially sound and prudent with a balanced budget of $2.7 million in operating funds, with over 50% in reserves. In today's economic climate, that's a big accomplishment. Thanks largely to the success of Terranea, their TOT tax has aided greatly in the buildup of reserves, as 100% of those monies are placed in the capital improvement project reserves. We are now moving forward on long overdue and outdated infrastructure needs. Last year, I presented a new and viable program that assists our community. The bicycle program primarily serves Western Avenue and has played an important role in reducing crime on Western Avenue and PV Drive South. We also engaged the Volunteers on Patrol program, which has added and provided an additional 1,920 patrol hours in our city. When I served as mayor last year, the council generated a comprehensive list of goals to improve our city on behalf of the residents. Updates were made monthly as these goals became a reality. This is a first for the city. We have been able to make significant progress on such goals as public safety and a focus on crime prevention, San Ramon stabilization project, public infrastructure, government efficiency, fiscal control and transparency, reviewing our city reserve policy, Southern California Edison issues, and trail issues within our city. The City Council has undertaken valiant strides towards greater transparency and accountability and surpasses any of its neighboring cities in that regard. For the past 19 years, RPV has followed the strictest guidelines of the GFOA. I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve you and represent you. I would be honored to serve you again for 4 more final years. God bless our great nation, and don't forget to vote on November 5th.
First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and tell you some of the things that I believe are important. Obviously, in this kind of format, we can't cover all the things or cover them in depth. I would suggest that you get a sheet from the back which goes over 17 issues that I think are appropriate to be considered and a brief message of how they should be considered. If you want to get more in-depth, go to my website, kendida.com, and I treat each issue in more depth so you'll get a better understanding of where I'm coming from. There are certain things that I believe need improvement. The city has come a long way. We've met pretty much all the goals we started out to do. As a low-density city, we started out with some 42,000 people. 40 years later, we've only got 43,000 and some. That's a remarkable improvement. We've also maintained a lot of more open space, but we've had challenges in how that open space is going to be managed. In some cases, there were threats to it, and fortunately, groups again rose to stop that threat, as we did when we formed the city in the first place. We have goals. I have a different approach to a goal. A goal is not merely a statement of what you wish to achieve. It requires that you have a specific end product, a schedule, and if required, a budget to accomplish it. Because unless you have those measurands, how do you know you've reached the goal? You'll just go on and on saying you're attacking the goal, you're reaching it, but you never get there. You're on a treadmill. So you need to take care of that as well. There are some things that have changed in terms of some of our ordinance that I believe have gone beyond the original intent of what the ordinances were meant to be. And I have to take some blame for that because the 16-foot by right for views was something that was put together when I was asked, how high is a single-story building, because that's what people have a right to. And I said, well, mine is 16 feet. Well, 16 feet became by right. Unfortunately, it's applied to things beyond the envelope of the structure. It gets into the side yard setbacks, which takes out views. We need to relook at all of these issues and make sure that they track with what we originally intended. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I hope I will be able to serve you in the next 4 years. Vote on November 5th.
Thanks, Ken. I'm running for re-election because the first 4 years was more rewarding than I had anticipated. We were able to get more done than I had hoped for. During that time, I've helped bring common sense, fiscal planning, transparency, and real accountability to City Hall. I'll continue to preserve our open spaces. I always have. I came from a small town. I like that small town atmosphere. We've got that mostly here in Rancho Palos Verdes, and I will continue to fight for that, improve our public safety and our quality of life. Some of the accomplishments over the first 4 years is, as I had mentioned in my opening statement, our new relationship with the Sheriff's Department. We've got a level of engagement at all levels, from HOAs, Neighborhood Watch, City Council, individual neighbors, that I haven't seen, or I didn't see the first 3 years or so. Captain Boland at the Sheriff's Department does a terrific job, and they've got a terrific reputation. Public infrastructure. Look where we've come with San Ramon Canyon. Biggest project ever in the 40 years of our history. It's going to be completed in April. We've got some of our tax dollars that we've paid out are actually coming back to our community, with about half of that cost being picked up. Ensuring the safety of RPV residents living near the Gaffey Street propane and butane tanks. I was one of the leaders in making sure that we had all the facts on those potential safety issues. Right now, we've got Homeland Security that says they're safe. We've got the EPA saying that they're not safe. I've been working with those residents, and why is that important? Because we've got people that live within 400 meters of them, and those tanks, if something went wrong, that collateral damage goes well into Rancho Palos Verdes. Same with Ponte Vista. I was a leader in looking at the potential problems with the traffic and potential crime and other problems coming from changing that neighborhood, which was a single-family home neighborhood, into 4 times that density, which we need to make sure that is properly studied before we as a community get on board with it. I've helped expand the resident-run Financial Advisory Committee. I've always been a big supporter of getting more community involvement and more community control and oversight over how our local government works. And lastly, the Trump Organization. That was a potential financial disaster for our city. It's been completely turned around. I was happy to have played a lead role in that with Councilman Misitich. And the rest of our city council people in resolving that. So I like the job. I think I'm good at it, and I'm sure looking forward to the next 4 years. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome me. Please join me in a round of applause for our candidates. Question, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, on behalf of all 3 of us, thank you for leading, being tonight's moderator. Thank you very much, and thank LongPoint Homeowners Association. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, you know, I have an appreciation for what it takes to run for office, and I think standing on an for an election is is a unique experience, and I congratulate all 3 of you and appreciate that you're endeavoring to bring these issues to our city. Community involvement's what makes RPV different. So thank you to the audience. Thanks for our LongPoint volunteers and city staff. Please stay around, eat more cookies. Candidates may be here for a while too. And there's great literature back on the table. Thank you all.